chairman of the day, Dr. Majid Al-Saleh, the consultant of internal medicine and head of the medical department in Mubarak Al-Kabir Hospital. Welcome, Dr. Majid.
More, I just feel so depressed. I just feel like I'm getting sicker and sicker and older. I want to see my children grow older. I want to see my grandchild grow up. I just don't want to die. I just want to live longer. I don't want to have a PCI. All I want is my HbA1c levels to stabilize so I can live a normal life.
And I'm 50 years old. I weigh 98 kilos since I was in secondary school. I always struggled to lose weight. Back in 2008, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and the doctor put me on glucophage 500 milligram twice a day and asked me to decrease my weight and exercise more. 2011, my primary care doctor decided to add Genovia 100 milligrams for a better control of my diabetes, but still, it wasn't working. Therefore, 2 years later, in 2013, they decided to add Lantus, and I started taking 25 units a day. By this time, I was taking quite a bit of medication, which really bothered me a lot. I started to develop shortness of breath. Upon simple efforts that I did, I was weak and I had swelling in my legs and in my feet. I went to do regular checkups, of course, and did a stress test and an electrocardiogram. Then he told me and my husband that I had heart failure, stage 2. Which I don't think really surprised me, since my dad died due to heart failure, and all the tests and examinations were not the results that we wanted. They were in a mess, really. This is when I felt the alarm ring, and I needed to do something regarding my type 2 diabetes and my newly developed heart failure. Imagine, 45 and having these conditions. My cardiologist recommended Jardiance, a new type of treatment for diabetes type 2 patients that they might help the condition I was in, and also he gave me heart failure medication on top of that. I look forward to seeing some improvement in my condition, as it's really, I find it devastating to reach this point at this age and not be able to take long walks with my children, to climb the stairs without falling short of breath, being breathless, and also not being able to have a good night's sleep.
This is the elephant. He's already down here, and he's going to really charge if not already present. You've heard from Dr. Waleed's talk about our part of the world in the GCC. So this is from the IDF all the way from 2009 up until recently. You can see we topped the charts, top 10 GCC countries. 2009, 12, 13, 15, 16 WHO, 17, you name it. Just look for them, and we're there in terms of the age-adjusted prevalence of diabetes. And this is the registry, a cohort actually from Sweden, and it looked to more than 2.2 million people, whether they have type 2 diabetes or they don't, and they follow them over a decade. You can see that the cardiovascular outcome is at least double the diabetes in terms of your mortality, whether it was cardiovascular related or coronary event. And that percentage, as you already heard, will get worse if you either have cardiovascular disease or if you have a longer duration of diabetes, because that risk, instead of double, can be 4, 5, 10 times the risk. So generally, heart failure is nothing in comparison in terms of prevalence to diabetes. It's about 1 to 2% around the world. So it's not the number that is a big thing. But projection-wise, it's going to increase because we're doing better in terms of therapy. So the numbers will increase to at least a double over the next decade. The main challenge that we have as cardiologists is this word, hospitalization. So patients who, at least in the US, we have over 1 million people hospitalized with heart failure. 5% who are in hospital are related to heart failure. And 90% of the patients are chronic heart failure. Only 1 out of 10 are de novo new. And they stay about 1 week in hospital on average. Not only this, but when you discharge them, within a month's time, a quarter of them will be readmitted. And in 2 months' time, half of them will be readmitted. So how much do we spend? We spend about 70% on only hospitalization of heart failure. So heart failure is a big deal in terms of spending money by countries. So if I go back in history a bit, before 1980, in the 1700s, we didn't have much in terms of treatment of heart failure. Most of the therapies were plant-related. And this is, I don't know if he's a physician, William, in the 17th century, Withering, had used the foxglove to treat heart failure patients. And later on, when it was analyzed, this was the foxglove, which was later called digitalis purpura. It looks like a finger, and it's purple. That's why the name came to life. So in the 80s, only bed rest, fluid restriction, DIG, and diuresis were the therapies. But in the mid-80s, the therapy started to advance, data came to life, and we thought about hypertrophy and vasodilators. When I was a medical student, this is what we're looking into, neurohormonal activation and therapy related to that. So ACE inhibitors, ARBs. But at this stage, beta blockers were a contraindication for heart failure. In the 2000s, that became completely different. Beta blockers, diuretics, mineralocorticoid antagonists, and in 2010, heart rate was the therapy, a new way of therapy. And 2014, a new entity, which is angiotensin receptor plus an equilibrium inhibitor for the therapy of heart failure. Those 3 lines. One, you have mechanical and electrical therapy, which I'm not going to be talking about, but there is a hemodynamic and metabolic way of treating heart failure. We have stratified our patients mostly based on the ejection fraction. That's why we call 2 heart failure patients either HFrEF or HFpEF, but both have bad mortality, and our risk stratification was based mostly on the lower the ejection fraction, the worse the prognosis. Now, in this spot, even probably if you have a high ejection fraction with restrictive physiology, you're also in bad shape. But does that mean that we have to do an echo on every admission a heart failure patient comes into? What about those who don't have good windows or are not very cooperative, especially if they're human? What about teaching our students or our juniors to do echoes regularly to evaluate whether we can help our patients with heart failure? Reload is different than those usual diuretics, which reduce the intravascular compartment and sends a negative signal to trigger renin-angiotensin-aldosterone, whereas SGLT2 inhibitors reduce the interstitial compartment without triggering that cascade. So it reduces the preload, it also reduces the afterload by vasodilating the peripheral vessels. It has an effect on the liver, where it produces ketone by the beta-hydroxylase, which is a super fuel to the mitochondria. So it improves the myocardial function. It also has a direct, effect on the nephron. It reduces the flow through the afferent artery, and on the long term, these are hypotheses where you can have reduction in the inflammation, especially with the lipids in the heart and the reduction in the fibrosis. So it works also on some calcium handling and sodium handling, both in the kidney and in the heart. The sodium hydrogen exchanger, whether it was type 1 or 3. So how do we get the benefit? It reduces the myocardial load. It's a super fuel energetic. It has a sodium and calcium handling that improves the kinetics of the heart, and it may also reduce fibrosis and adipose tissue inflammation. So early on in the disease, you have a hemodynamic effect, and long term, you have a metabolic effect. And we will see that in some of the trials. When we looked at the trials of the SGLT2 in terms of cardiovascular outcome, whether it was empagliflozin, ganagliflozin, or DAPA, all of them showed cardiovascular mortality benefit. Now, to us as cardiologists, if you look at the characteristics, empagliflozin in the EMPA-REG, almost 100% of the patient had cardiovascular disease. So that fits our patients. You know, a year after the trial came out in 2005, I was thinking how to start the therapy and at what dose, and I didn't know all the side effects. But we have to teach ourselves. This is the EMPA-REG trial, which when they screened about 11,000 people, they enrolled 7,020. They randomized them to a placebo.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Chairman. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Really a great pleasure to participate in this symposium, the journey of the diabetes. Can I have the pointer, please? Thank you. So, now this is a new pointer, see if it works. Okay, so let's start by introducing a case, and before that, this is my disclosure. This is a case to show you how we practice using the SGLT2 and other medications in our daily practice. This is a local female patient, 55 years old. She sustained acute anterior stinging in July. Then we thrombolyze in the evening, and we take her on the next day into the chest hospital for the pharmacoinvasive strategy. And then the coronary angel shows that there's LAD was occluded acutely, and there was mild lesion in the circumflex and about moderate lesion in RCA, 40 to 50%. So she underwent PCR with one drug-eluting stent to the LAD. She's a long-standing diabetic patient, and she was on a cocktail of glucophage of 850 twice and dimicron and Januvia, and Lipitor on low doses of 20, and hypertension for the hypertension on ramipril and mild kidney disease. Now, ejection fraction acutely after the event showed that 40%, which is reduced, with the regional motion abnormality in the anterior wall and no gross valvular pathology. These are the cocktail of medication after the PCI with the dual antiplatelet of aspirin Plavix. The Lipitor was increased to the 80, kept with ramipril, added beta blockers and aldactone, and in addition of keeping the diabetic medication more or less or same. These are the lab in the where before or prior to discharge. You can see and notice that the LDL should be always the reason why they sustain a mind. The LDL is very high, the creatine clearance 61, and the glucose is around 10. We see here after 1 month, still the parameters improved, but not for the hypertension is not optimally controlled. The glycate is around 8, and she had usually when they come the night before clinic, they always eat a heavy meal and a lot of carbohydrates. So she reported that she had a very heavy meal prior to these investigations as a reason why these are high. So we modified her treatment, of course, according to the guidelines, we hit her by 2 medication, ARBs, myocarditis, and Radisson. And nowadays, because of the recent guidelines in the European Society of Cardiology in last August in Paris, they downgrade the target of LDL from 1.8 or less to 1.4, and that could not be possible with single medication, so we now adding almost routinely for all our patients after the guidelines of ezetimibe, and then we added the empaglifizinband of 10 milligram, and then we increased her glucophage to its maximum tolerated doses, which is 1,000 twice daily. Now we used to see them 2 months after the first initial, so there are some improvement in her parameters. The blood pressure has improved on the triple or 3. You remember Aldactone also working. And remember also the empaglifizinband has impact on reducing the blood pressure as well. So all of this contributed to her controlling her blood pressure to 130/75. LDL has improved, but not to the target. It's still above the target. If you want the current guidelines, this is beyond the target. And blood sugar is reasonably improved. So automatically, because local patient nowadays, if not to the target, we offer her a PCSK9 inhibitor. So we offer her PCSK9 inhibitor, and we'll repeat the echo, and we will see her in next month. So the objective to show how we use the evidence base that has been published recently to our patients in collaboration with the diabetologists. We are not taking the drug, but we are sharing the medication both by diabetologists as well as by us. And we'll see the impact of this drug on mortality, as well as cardiovascular risk, event reduction, and last on hospitalization of heart failure. You know, last August, there are multiple guidelines, and among them, in addition to dyslipidemia in Paris last August, they were published guidelines for diabetes and cardiovascular disease, the cardiometabolic, by European Society of Cardiology, and published in European Heart Journal, and this is in collaboration with European Association for Diabetes. And in 2016, where the guidelines of heart failure and disease prevention were stated that the SGLT2 is a class 2A indication. Now, in both these two guidelines, disease prevention and heart failure, now we can see clearly that the guidelines has upgraded the SGLT2 from class 2A to the class 1. The green is class 1, and the red is class 3, contraindication or not indication. So clearly the guidelines have upgraded to class 1 and showing that the EMPA, CANA, and DARA are recommended in patients with diabetes and established cardiovascular disease, and or at a very high risk or high risk cardiovascular to reduce cardiovascular events. Now, very important, because of the mortality reduction that was seen by the EMPA-REG outcome, they stated by name that the drug empagliflozin is recommended in patients with type 2 diabetes and established cardiovascular disease to reduce the risk of death. So that was class 1 indication. So nowadays we are using it more and more in our patient, in addition to what is being given of the other medication. Now, very important also, this is a very nice meta-analysis, and these also data drawn from STEAM2 trial of type control of not only diabetes, but dyslipidemia and hypertension, and stated clearly that in patients with type 2 diabetes, improvements in the blood pressure and lipids have the greatest impact on cardiovascular events. So not only we are treating for empagliflozin, comparative effectiveness and safety, one of the largest world data or world evidence data about the empagliflozin. The background of this is that they need, there is established reduction in 3-point MACE, hospitalization, heart failure, total mortality, cardiovascular mortality, and the renal. So 14% reduction in 3-point MACE, cardiovascular 35%, renal 39%, hospitalization 35%, or causes mortality around 32%. They want to see if this is welcome into routine clinical practice. And they will use what is called the additional analysis indicating these effects are they consistent across the cardiovascular risk continuum that was seen in the EMPA-REG population. So more broader population will be used. In addition, the background to use what is the economic benefit to the healthcare system and the cost benefit that was not addressed in the EMPA-REG outcome. So the rationale, the importance to generalize information. So they will recruit more extreme of age, more comorbidities, as well as patients without cardiovascular disease. Remember, EMPA-REG, almost all the patients, 99.9%, were cardiovascular disease. And they want to answer the question that the pivotal trials were not designed to address the impact of healthcare resources utilization and cost. So they want to know if there is a cost-benefit issue of using the drug in our routine clinical practice. You know, in the cardiovascular risk, about 1 in 3 patients with diabetes have almost primary prevention, and they want to see have the drug impact on the primary outcome. They used the drug in the 3 large US database, very large database, and they tested the comparator drugs, or the competitive drug is the DPP-4 inhibitor, namely sitagliptin. So they want to know that effectiveness of SGLT2 versus sitagliptin DPP inhibitors in patients with type 2 diabetes. And whether, if there is a positivity, if you have the choices, whether you want to use DPP as initial on top of your medication, or to use SGLT2, namely EMPA, in this population. A huge number of the patients, you can see there are 116,000 in the EMPA arm, and 116,000 in the sitagliptin of DPP-4 inhibitor arm. These are the 3 bases, the database, using Medicare of all the ages to know how the drug have any impact on elderly. And these are the inclusion criteria. Anybody in SGL2 in the prior 1 month will be excluded, or either DPP-4 will be excluded, otherwise all medication will be included. And they use in any real-world evidence, you use for statistical analysis what is called propensity score matching. And the propensity score matching use a lot of covariance, elimination, or try to reduce the co-founding factors to eliminate the bias of your results. And by using propensity score, you improve the comparison of patient matched by the baseline characteristics, so you can make better the comparison and better data and eliminate as much as you can the bias. So that is the propensity score, and used in every world data evidence. A comprehensive assessment in this program. Now I am only presenting the hospitalization of heart failure because that was on 35,000 patients published and in the last August. But look to the extensive program that they were testing, and they were presented hopefully by the next year. All the primary outcome, hospitalization, cardiovascular, mortality, 3-point MACE, diabetic ketoacidosis, euglycemic diabetic, they want to know also the acute kidney injury, the hypoglycemia with incidence, all of these will be presented. In addition, that was not tested in the randomized control of EMPA-REG, the healthcare resources. The cost, the issue, the how much it costs in and out, and what is the, if there is a cost benefit from using the drug. And this is the algorithm of how they proceed in their analysis. And you see, look, they screen more than 340,000 patients. And ultimately, by using the propensity score matching, by comparing similarity in the baseline, they ended up with 17,500 in the EMPA for analysis versus 17,500 in excess of that with the sitagliptin. And the very short follow-up is 5.4 months that they will analyze the data. So the data will come hopefully next year. Baseline characteristics in the EMPA-REG, you look, they broadly, so history of cardiovascular disease in the EMPA-REG outcome, 99.9. In the real-world data is about almost a quarter, 25%. So majority were now cardiovascular disease. How about hypertension? A very large proportion of hypertension and dyslipidemia. Remember, the cardiovascular event will be more reduced when you treat the other comorbidity of particularly the hypertension and the dyslipidemia. ARBs was used, or ACE in majority of the patient, or beta blocker was not as much as ARBs. Statin was the primary limit lowering. We will know next year if the ezetimibe will be analyzed, data of ezetimibe will be analyzed. Remember, in the EMPA-REG, the insulin was almost 47 to 50% usage. Here, the insulin is about 27, 26%, so less insulin usage than the randomized controlled trial.
Yeah, thank you very much for this comprehensive session. Actually, I remember 1 year ago, there was a debate between the Dr. Mousa Akbar and Dr. Talal if this drug will be a drug for diabetologists or a drug for cardiologist.
It might be for a nephrologist in a couple of hours.
I think the cardiologists have managed to steal the drug from the diabetologist. And in fact, this was reflected in the recent guidelines about the use in such cardiology and the ADA. However, I would like to hear the comment of Dr. Waleed on how come they have the courage to make of those patients with naive diabetes to start SGLT inhibitors only on extrapolations of their beneficial effect on the heart without evidence. All the cardiovascular outcome trials was based on the baseline of metformin. Now they are stating without
He's commenting on the recent guideline. They made algorithm if the patient is naive. You can use SGL2 and they omit the metformin. If the patient with metformin add, so he's telling that, okay, patient naive, why we should not, and patient established cardiovascular disease, why we should not begin with metformin and SGL2 rather SGL2 without metformin.
When you talk about patient naive without cardiovascular disease, this is the time of
with cardiovascular disease.
if somebody with cardiovascular disease and who's newly diagnosed diabetics, now this is the controversy. Will you use metformin or will you use SGL2? The problem, if you look at the guidelines, that is, for example, IDF guidelines, they stuck with the metformin. And the reason is because of metformin have some evidence in primary prevention from the MTBs. Although it's a small number of patients, about 300 something patients, and also it's cheap and available and can be widely given to big population. With the SGL2 inhibitors for primary prevention, we still have no big data to look for somebody who have for primary prevention. For secondary prevention, drug naive patient, it's still, these patients does not fit the trial population. They are entirely different than the trial population. So you can extrapolate from the EMPA-REG and the other trials that I may use SGL2 as a first option, and I'm not against that overall. If it is available for the patient, I can afford it. But we still don't have the answer of that. Is this better than metformin? I don't know. I don't think anybody knows at this moment.
My other question to Muath about all the mechanistic effect of this SGLT.
Can suggest that that's the mechanism.
We know for sure that these drugs are increasing hormone. We know that, but this discrepancy from where it comes, is it from the islet cells or from an extraventricular cells? But we know that it increases.
Yeah, so
I don't know why they didn't mention that.
I'm not sure myself why not. It's just like even the mechanism, people are thinking why the LDL minor increase in the use of SGLT2 inhibitors. And they're trying to prove them even on basic science level. I think the question is, what is the dominant effect of these drugs? There is a clear hemodynamic effect and a clear metabolic effect. And the hormonal under the metabolic. And there is a cascade of therapies that we probably still don't know about aspirin or what happens other than thromboxane inhibition in this pathway. So a drug sometimes, from its side effects, from your observation after therapy, things may change. So maybe glucagon will play a role. Maybe it's related to other drugs used, to potentiate that effect. So I think before we have a proof of how it works, we cannot say that that's a main role.
It was not touched at all. I was surprised actually. Thank you.
Thank you for this excellent presentation. I have a comment on using the EMPA in acute coronary syndrome. Because from EMPA-REG trial, we see it is possible not concurrent care. For that, we prefer to start fastly, especially it decreases the cardiovascular death about 38%. And this is the period there is high cardiovascular death in acute coronary syndrome, this period after the event. Why we don't start fastly?
I think the answer is similar to the question. Because in the EMPA-REG, they did not do as low. You might have had a rise in the biochemical markers to suggest that he has BNP, but no clear heart failure. So I think those patients will benefit from SGLT2 inhibitors. But we have to use them after we document them in a trial of ACS.
Remember, in the EMPA-REG trial, the MI was not reduced, neither the stroke. So the drug has no vascular effect to reduce the MI.
I concentrate on this.
It's okay. So if you want to
high cardiovascular death in the period after
the other thing
around the acute coronary syndrome.
Yeah, the other thing, the trialists, when they design trial, they always want to exclude acute coronary syndrome in the first 4 weeks. And the reason behind it is that in MI sitting with acute coronary syndrome, a lot of complication might happen. Shock, arrhythmia, making patient instability. That will affect the tested drug in the acute setting. And this is exactly the same when somebody asks why PSSK not used on the day one, because they excluded the acute event. So anything happens by the nature of the MI might affect the results of the drug, and therefore on the there to get a good results and better, they exclude the acute. That doesn't mean contraindicate, but that excluded from the trial for this reason.
My next question to Waleed, why you don't start combination therapy? Low dose of metformin and low dose of EMPA if they establish cardiovascular disease, because they will benefit from the two.
According to the guidelines, actually, you have to start somebody with established cardiovascular disease. You are advised to start with SGLT2 inhibitors, so you can use combination therapy from this side. And many patients with higher HbA1c, also the guidelines advise that you use combination therapy. So the use of combination therapy early in the treatment of type 2 diabetes is very well pushed by the guidelines. And there is, and we do that now on a daily basis.
I don't speak about HbA1c more than 7.5, which European recommended, or ADA above 9. I speak about less than 7.5. Why we don't start
If your HbA1c more than 6.5, according to the AACE, for example, they advise combination therapy. So, you know, this depends on your clinical judgment with your patient. We know that depends on what's the guideline for your patient. What do you think this patient needs his HbA1c to be? Is young, to be very low, probably hitting very hard early is recommended. If the patient is elderly, you don't want to hit very hard, maybe you just use one single agent. So it depends on the patient.
Okay, I think we should thank our two speakers. Thank you very much. And please.